People often forget something when they think of our foe. They speak of their vile evils that they commit, the monsters they become, the horrid and grotesque abominations they have transformed themselves into. And they think that this means that sinning is a horrible thing to be avoided. And while it most certainly is, they then go on to say it is unnatural. That, sadly, is not true. To sin is in our very nature. To feel the urge to sin is to be human. Our very nature revolves around us and our temptations, and the virtues to strive for are the opposite of our own nature. That is why we are stronger for rejecting sin. We stare down at the nasty, horrible parts of ourselves and deny them. We find the strength within us to get up and do the right thing purely because it is right. To give in to your sin is weakness, and we have all been weak at times, but the severity is what matters most here. For tonight I wish to speak of those who do not give in to minor indulgences, those who steal a pack of rations to feed themselves or masturbate in their private tent or whatever. No, today I wish to speak to those who have looked at their core, looked inside to know what it is to sin, its horrid nature in earnest, and have not only leaped headfirst into it, but will do unspeakable things to others, so that they could always indulge in their sickest of fantasies. Those who have looked at the grace of God and rejected him, or in some sense of rebellion seek to end him, his reign, and his kingdom. I speak of the bulk fighting force on the side of hell, and the endless marches of these infernally aligned mortal men, the heretic legions. Men and women who have pledged themselves totally and fully with that of hell, and have long crossed the point of no return. Nothing but wicked and bitter hatred for all of God's creation lingers in their soul. And I desperately want this point to linger with you for a moment. The sheer dedication they have to the very concept of being wrong. To them, evil is good, and good is evil. But let me go back in time a little and explain exactly how they came to be. For originally hell had no mortal arm or force, and relied solely on its demonic forces, the servants of the seven-headed court. And while the gate of hell opened, it was this demonic legion that sprung forth, with no willing mortal man in sight. The forces of hell captured most of the Levant in no time at all. It was the descendants of those unable to escape that they had captured that became the citizens of hell on earth. It's hard to speak truly of how bad things are on their streets, since most of the spies we have sent into their lands come back as an endlessly screaming head, capable of nothing but feeling pain and anguish, the goetic rune carved into their forehead, keeping them alive. Those who have managed to return come back somewhat shell-shocked, and speak of the horrors that are performed there every moment of every day. Every firstborn child is cast into fires before effigies of Lord Baal. People prostrate themselves before golden calf statues, removing layers of their flesh in reverence. Within the darkest pits of the iron and blackstone towers that dart the land, the screams of the ever-weeping victims can be heard. This is where all those who are captured in battle are slowly sliced to death over a matter of days, with wicked knives made of infernal basalt, if they are lucky, that is. Their meat is then taken to the market square to be sold for consumption. Any local that commits a good deed as we would see it is taken and crucified upon upside-down crosses, mounted on the walls of the cathedrals to the lords of sin. Their cities mark the very skies with sprawling factories made of mutilating flesh and metal, endlessly producing the weapons of war, guided by the teachings of their Tartarus smiths. Alchemists toil over colossal weapons and armored behemoths, wielding the forbidden secrets of their patron's metallurgy, to forge instruments of death and suffering beyond the grasp of any human engineer. The very concept of this land is foul, but to some who are born here, it is everything. They look to the lords of demons who treat them like property with total reverence and loyalty, and seek to serve them over anything else. They wish to fight for it, and so sign up to join the legions, but they will not just accept anyone. Only those who are foul and strong in equal measure can make it in the forces of hell. They have a trial, an initiation rite, where all who wish to serve take an unholy pilgrimage to the very gateway to hell itself. Being in the same region of the gate is enough to start burning both the flesh and the soul. Many die trying to get close to it, but there are many more so unlucky who are in a permanent state of being half alive. Their souls forever writhed in pure singed agony until the world itself will end and Judgment Day is upon us. It is said that the darker your heart, the easier it is to tolerate the flames, but by no means does that make them hurt less. And those who can take the journey all the way so that the maw of hell itself is visible on the horizon are deemed worthy of serving hell. They then take unholy vows that forever chain their very spirit for all eternity into darkness. Then the servants of a devil lord, those who represents one of the 7 deadly sins, claim one of the new neophytes, and brand their flesh with the mark of their sin. A heretic priest, the leaders of their warbands, will hear the whispers of their patron lord, who tells them that they have a new servant for them. The priest will then call them forth to serve them as their minion. This is how a new heretic trooper is born, and from their wickedness and evil deeds will bring ruin. Every single one of them has taken such a pledge and deeds. It did not take long for these mortal soldiers to overtake the numbers of Hell's demonic forces. And now, in the modern day, the forces of the Heretic Legion are the largest force in service of Hell on Earth. Not just because this is their home, or because they outnumber them, but also because of their willingness to adapt with technology. The Heretic Legion are a very strong fighting force, but they sadly have a huge supremacy when it comes to the Navy. No force on Earth comes close to the power their raiding parties have amassed. And while we have won the odd skirmish here or there on sea, with my homeland of England being the most successful, they have sadly near global naval supremacy. Once their forces took Gibraltar and turned it into a fortress, they have been rather untouchable in this aspect. While on land we can deal with them fine enough, their power over the waves results in us having to guard every single coast. Not an easy feat, but one that must be done. But with that caveat out of the way, I should get into how most of their warbands are actually comprised. For at some point or another, you are going to face every single foe I am about to list, at least once, if you survive long enough that is. So I would pay attention if I were you. I shall start with the leaders of their warbands, the foul heretic priests, the clergymen of the damned, those who with fervor and fire preach the wills of hell and the arch-devils, doing their bidding, but in whatever dark and depraved way they want. They often answer directly to demon lords, ones like Pazuzu and Sukuth Binoth, or any other demon below the archdevils that have considerable power. These are their patrons, in the same way that we have saints, but obviously much more foul. How exactly one becomes a priest here, I cannot say in full earnest, and if I had to guess, there are probably multiple ways to become one. From what I can gather, while it is a religious title, it is still a title that can be earned or inherited. So if one trooper goes above and beyond, perhaps one day he could become one. It's also quite likely that they are taken from some form of hell-aligned nobility. Regardless of how they gain such a title, they are often capable of foul spells. The most common one I have seen is their puppeteering of other bodies, able to force both friend and foe, and sometimes themselves, to move in any way they see fit. They can move them quite far and fast with this as well. I can't say for sure how exactly they do it, but it looks like they're pulling the very blood they have in their system around, and their body just goes with it. I've heard it hurts, but I'm quite lucky enough to not have experienced it myself. I can't help but feel that this power of theirs is a little bit symbolic, as it shows how they treat their minions as little more than tools to be exploited. Describing their leadership as tyranny would probably be a compliment in their eyes. Their dark chants and reciting of evil doctrine has also been known to make people bleed from their ears and have their eyeballs burst from their sockets, just in case for a slight second you forgot how horrible they are. Now let me move on to one that is somehow more foul. A horrid being that will confuse almost anyone that looks upon them. The chorister. Remember, our sins are their virtues, and one of the greatest sins you can commit is suicide. But those loyal to hell, our mortal sins, are their brave acts, something to be seen as wondrous. So some of them would forsake the idea of a dark pilgrimage to hell and instead pledge themselves in a different way. They head to grand altars before inverted pyramids that are pledged to archdevils, and begin to mutilate themselves, carving runes into their flesh and ripping out chunks of it, inflicting as much pain onto themselves as they can. And as their final act, they will try to behead themselves slowly, with most of them making it only about halfway before their body gives out and they die in agony. And that is how most of them will end. Death by torturous suicide. But some of them do acts so wicked and brutal that the archdevils take pride in their devotion and reward them. 9 days after their death, their body will begin to rise again. It has already started rotting at this point, but they will remove what is left of their head and pick it up, often carving 1 or 2 more runes into it. The wounds that they managed to make on their body before they died will have cold blood bubble out, forming diabolic symbols that will writhe and reshape themselves often. They will carry their head with them always, for now and forever it sings ruinous hymns dedicated to hell. The sheer horror of such songs induces visions of the pits of hell in those who wish not to hear it, making all of their foes weaken at the very sight of them. They go where they please, but often join warbands to the archdevils that revive them, and heed the calls of the priests as they serve the same master. Moving on to a unit that perfectly counters one of our strongest. A soldier raised within hell itself. See, some servants of hell look for those born with pure evil in their hearts, and if they think they are worthy, they will take the youth to hell itself, though this is rare and almost none of them ever return. But those who do are to be feared, for they are the death commandos. In hell, they are trained to be the best assassins anyone could ever be. No one knows what their training is, but I imagine it's, well, not pleasant to put it bluntly. Once their training is done, their tongues are cut out, making them unable to speak, even if they wish to, which many wouldn't. They are then given silenced pistols and the Tartarus claws they use to rend people with. But the thing that sets them apart, and why they are the fear of all sniper priests, is their stealth generators. I don't know exactly how they work, but in their center is a still beating heart, that is what I can tell you. And this allows them to not be seen by anyone who is not close to them. The sheer shocking part of this is that it hides them from even the divine, including God. Yes, you heard me correctly. God himself cannot see the death commander when this is activated, meaning that those who rely on his words to aim are powerless against them. Even without the element of surprise, they are a force to be reckoned with. Their reflexes are just too fast, and their claws are able to easily rend through armor. Let me now move on to their more basic units, the Heretic Troopers. These are regular soldiers who have finished their pilgrimage to Hell and are ready to fight on the front lines against the likes of us. Although they often have some foul and unholy objects in their possession, really just to oppose the fact that we have holy ones. They can even be promoted to the rank of Legionnaire, although how they differ in this depends on each warband really. Some of them being a lot more regimented with marching uniforms, and some are trophy hunters, seeking the best for themselves, hoping to hide it from their masters. Some specialized in ranged weapons, others melee. You should be able to tell them apart at a glance, however, at least if they are right next to each other, that is. Next, I shall warn you of the anointed, soldiers that began their service above and beyond. Remember when I told you that a man has to witness the gateway on the horizon so that they may become a trooper? Well, what happens when you successfully reach it? To walk so close to the gate that you could almost touch it? Well, that is when you get an anointed. These fanatics are both titans in body and evil in soul. The extended pilgrimage flays the skin, turning it into blackened ash, still covered in blisters that will never heal in any form. To them, it will feel like their very veins are made of fire, and they will revel in it, for it proves their total and utter loyalty to Hell, and these are a colossal threat in war. Once their deeds are recognized, they are bound into their armor forever, and branded with a superior infernal brand. This marks them out as superior, and they will do whatever they please in the service of their priests. But they are not the largest of our foe here, for that would be the dreaded war wolves, monsters of huge size and power. These are little more than wild, hellish animals that seek to kill everything in its path, and it does that frighteningly well. To make things worse, they are often armed with hell-forged armor and weapons, made to turn them into war machines. It's a common staple of them to have a chainsaw maw and their claws extended with infernal iron. Their armor often branded with the mark of whatever demon smith made them. No doubt a pride for them in their disgusting ilk. They are, however, little more than beasts, as I said, and it's quite common for them to just be unleashed on a battlefield with little thought for strategy and objectives. This does, however, go out the window depending on how willing the priest is to train one, although I imagine a few of them were ripped apart for attempting to do just that. Moving on to the next thing I wish to warn you of, something that can wipe out an entire platoon in one moment instead of taking 5. The damned artillery witches. These beings are quite monstrous. In fact, I'm not even sure they're fully human. They may indeed be partly mechanical, although I do think they have some flesh in them somewhere. But no one has ever seen their face, nor hear them speak. But that is not the part that worries me, no. The thing to fear with them is their preferred method of attack linked to their name. See, what these witches can do is quite simple. They open small, starry black portals into hell. But they don't do this to bring more forces or affect people with the horrors it should, but instead to summon one item: an infernal bomb. They manifest these bombs that were freshly produced from a factory in hell, and using supernatural powers, throw them at insane distances and speeds. These are Hell's answer to artillery pieces, hence the name. The difference is that instead of a regimented machine that stands in place, there is a levitating madwoman chucking bombs around. It is a far more difficult target to hit, I assure you. And since they have more bombs being produced than there are witches on the battlefield, this means that they can do it endlessly. They can continuously barrage everything that is even getting close to them, sometimes throwing them only a couple feet away from themselves, only stopping when it's guaranteed to destroy themselves, not just likely to. Moving on. The last I shall mention is something I shall save the greater discussion for another day, since they can be found within the ranks of the Heretic Legion, but are more likely to be within the ranks of the Seven-Headed Serpent. These are what we call the wretched, essentially slaves taken from our forces in battle and tortured extensively, and then given an ultimatum: serve the forces of hell and be free, or continue with this fate. They do have a law in if they kill one of the faithful to God, they will be set free. But I would be shocked if they uphold that, and if they ever make it far. If you see one of them, do have mercy on them and kill them, but don't spare a prayer for them. They did choose to turn their back on God, purely to save themselves pain. The main reason I feel like I have to mention them now is it's because the Heretic Legion are the one that take most of the would-be wretches in order to give them to their masters, the Seven-Headed Serpent. This is what they do when they raid our homelands or attack our forces. For this is the fate of many if we are not successful at holding them at bay. And I will not let that happen to anyone if I had my way about things. But alas, I am but one man, and they are many. The forces of hell are numerous, and this mortal arm is their current front force in their war with Earth. They seek nothing but hatred and darkness, to do unspeakable things to any innocent they can get their hands on. And yet, they are not the worst of Hell's forces. Not even close. In fact, I would say that they are somehow the least evil they have. But then again, you should never grade evils, for if one is the worst, you might be tempted to kinship with the least. So remember, once a heretic, always a heretic. These monsters should be put down on sight, slaughtered like they deserve to be. But there are so many of them. Their waves feel endless at this point. But luckily, we have more bullets than they have men. So let them keep coming, and we'll shoot them all down. Alright, soldier, you get some rest. For the reason I told you of all this tonight is because my scouts reported a Legion's warband about a day or two's journey away. We might not intersect, but a fight could be on our hands any moment now. So you'll need all the strength you can get. Dismissed. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next with me, fellow traveler, have a good day.